#1 killer in the country? It beat out AIDS, heroin, crack, cocaine, alcohol, car accidents, fire, and murder combined. Tobacco.
That's a nasty, dirty thing to say, son. A lovely, pure white cigarette causing cancer. It gets me right here.
With an average of 430,000 deaths per year, considering it's a #1 killer, it's interesting to know that tobacco receives government subsidies and is grown with radioactive fertilizer.
Now get out there and sell cigarettes!
#2 on the list, if we don't include poor diet and physical inactivity, with well over 85,000 deaths a year, alcohol. As we look much further down the list, there are others that may surprise you. Caffeine comes in with 1 to 10,000 deaths a year. And some of our most popular pain relievers, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs such as aspirin, still make an appearance with over 7,500 deaths annually. Where does marijuana lie in this? What kind of staggering number do we find?
I don't know, 50,000?
250,000?
300,000?
For marijuana, I'd probably say then 80,000.
I would say it would be hundreds of billions.
Get ready for it. Here it comes.
There are no deaths from cannabis use anywhere. You can't find one.
In 10,000 years of known use of marijuana, there's never been a single death attributed to marijuana. There's 400,000 deaths in America alone every year that are directly attributed to tobacco.
I've heard that you have to smoke something like 15,000 joints in 20 minutes to get a toxic amount of delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol. I challenge anybody to do that.
And even in the animal studies where people have loaded the animals up with doses that would be hundreds of times what a human could possibly be exposed to, no, the animals don't die. The LD50 seems to be astronomical.
I mean, you can die from ingesting too much aspirin. You can die from ingesting too much coffee.
The drug warriors who say we have to protect society, save these people, are being just a little bit disingenuous.
Not one university or medical facility has ever recorded a single death directly attributed to marijuana. But never mind that. There's other problems, other reasons to fear it. Take addiction, for example. There are more kids in addiction clinics for marijuana than any other substance. This must mean that marijuana is the most addictive substance today.
It's undoubtedly true that there are more teenagers and kids in treatment for marijuana than all the other drugs combined. What the DEA never tells you is why that's true.
A kid is caught possessing or smoking marijuana. He's taken to court. He's given a choice. Either you know, some horrible penalty, or you go to a treatment center. Obviously chooses to go to treatment, and goes to treatment there, he's considered an addict.
But then the DEA gets to point to that stat and say, look at all these kids in treatment for marijuana. God, it must be because today's marijuana is not the marijuana that your parents were smoking.
As far as I understand, only 3% of the people in treatment for marijuana are there voluntarily. The other 97% were told to by their guardian or told to by a judge. So you can choose between jail or treatment. And a lot of people choose treatment.
It provides no basis for speaking about addiction. Anybody who is at all sophisticated about marijuana would rate them the way two researchers were asked to rate drugs in order of addiction. Nicotine was 1, alcohol was 2, then heroin, then cocaine, then coffee, and then marijuana. There may have been a couple of other drugs, but marijuana was at the very bottom, below coffee.
This narcotic, unlike the opiates, the synthetics, and cocaine, is non-addictive.
What do you mean by non-addictive?
By non-addictive, it is meant that the user of marijuana, when deprived of the drug, will not experience the agonies of withdrawal. It is habituating, but its use can be discontinued.
Then what is its danger?
It's used as a scapegoat for covering up underlying problems in people, especially young people. Here I am. Don't ignore me.
If you use marijuana on a daily basis for a year or so, and you stop using it, you're going to notice some differences, but nothing like the kind of withdrawal people will experience in withdrawing from either tobacco or heroin.
But why would the government and the DEA want to put a statistic like that out there? We'll learn more about that later. The gateway theory. Is marijuana a gateway drug?
Yes, I think it is.
You haven't...
I don't exactly know why, but I know it is.
It opens a doorway to other drugs.
It makes you want to experience more.
It makes you feel good.
Yeah.
People want to experience something else and, you know, have a, I guess, more dreams.
Its greatest danger lies in the fact that it is a stepping stone to the harder drugs, such as morphine and heroin.
That's why there are people that want to legalize marijuana. They figure if they can get the young people in this country onto hard drugs, they can destroy your generation, or in this generation.
You know, in the days of Harry Anslinger, it was called the stepping stone hypothesis. If you stepped on this stone, marijuana, you were bound and determined to go on to the next stone, which would be one of the so-called hard drugs.
Every time it's been studied and looked at and so on, they have never, ever found that there's certainly nothing in marijuana that makes you want to go to anything else.
There is no inherent psychopharmacological property of the drug which pushes one toward another drug.
I'll smoke a joint. I want a bag of chips and fucking junk food. I don't want to go out and get ripped.
I drink alcohol. That's my drug of choice. It could be said I started on milk. I mean, this is crazy. If I use marijuana, why does that automatically make me a candidate to black tar heroin? It's a nonsensical argument.
In fact, only 1 out of every 104 marijuana users use cocaine, and less than 1 use heroin.
The black market throws the dealers of soft drugs together with the dealer of hard drugs.
So if you have a black market and you have a dealer that's dealing in marijuana and LSD and everything else, and the dealer might say to you, hey, you want to try something stronger? Well, in that sense, because of the black market, because of prohibition, people may be more susceptible to seeing these other drugs and being willing to try these other drugs.
And so what you see is that there is a gateway effect, but it's a gateway effect caused by prohibition and the blending of the hard and soft drug markets.
Where does this leave us? Oh, wait. What about laziness? You will be useless to society if you use marijuana. But if that's true, well, there are about 50 million people who smoke marijuana in America, and over half of the Canadian population who've tried it. And yet, both societies seem to flourish. And just look who some of these people are.
Stephen Jobs developed Apple Computers smoking pot. Ted Turner developed CNN News smoking pot, still smokes a joint every day. You go through every musician you like, from the Rolling Stones to the Beatles to Led Zeppelin, they all smoke pot.
Snoop Dogg, Willie Nelson.
Come on, Bill Clinton,
He didn't inhale, man.
He didn't.
Hell yeah.
Don't be so naive.
Virtually every presidential candidate has now copped to using marijuana at some time in his or her life.
A few times in the Army, I tried marijuana. It was not a significant part of my life.
I had a senior law enforcement official tell me that in his judgment, up to a quarter of the White House staff when they first came in had used drugs in the last 4 or 5 years.
The people that have personality problems and the people that are going to be lazy and going to lose their job, they're going to lose their job anyway. They're not losing their job because of marijuana. That's just a lie.
I love Tommy Chong. I think that a lot of the Cheech and Chong episodes that people believed, not knowing that Tommy wrote and directed the movies, thinking that, you know, that's what a stupid stoner looks like. No, actually, that's what a really brilliant creative genius looks like, acting like somebody you think's a stoner.
And none of this is borne out in the research or when you look at people who are long-term users and happen to be lawyers, judges, doctors, and, you know, writers.
But what about the potency of the drug?
Marijuana is dangerous. There's higher THC levels than ever before.
Anytime you got a bag of Colombian dope 20 years ago, it was way better than the Mexican swag that you normally got. So there's always been a range of THC in plants, and the fact that we can now grow stuff that's equivalent of what Colombian was 20 years, well, it doesn't mean that we're boosting THC to unheard of levels. It just means, you know, hi, there are some nuances in this discussion that people should be aware of.
And I actually think that it's a real stroke of our own ego to think that for the 50 or so years of Prohibition that we've improved upon varieties that have been cultivated for drug use in places like India and such for thousands of years.
People say, well, you can abuse marijuana. Well, shit, you can abuse cheeseburgers, too. You know, you don't go around closing Burger King because you can abuse something. I can take a fucking fork and jam it in my eyeballs. That mean forks should be illegal? You know, I could jump off a bridge. Should we outlaw bridges? Let's nerf the world.
Uptake or of discontinuation.
So what are the dangers of using marijuana?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Gives you like a rapid heartbeat.
Smoker's cough.
I'm sure it has some effect on your brain function, memory.
I don't know, is there something unhealthy about moving slowly?
It's not good for you.
You're not fully conscientious of what you're doing.
Thicken some membranes in your brain or something.
Well, it's been science. I guess I'm being told it's been scientifically proven that marijuana kills your brain cells.
That's the one I remember. Marijuana kills brain cells.
I thought the same thing. You know, I didn't start smoking pot until about 5 years ago. I thought pot made you stupid. You know, I bought into it just as much as anybody did. I realized when I was like 30 years old that I was tricked. I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me.
1974, the Heath-Tulin study. Ronald Reagan announces, the most reliable scientific sources say permanent brain damage is one of the inevitable results of the use of marijuana. Monkeys pumped full of marijuana, apparently 30 joints a day, had begun to atrophy and die after 90 days. Brain damage was determined after counting the dead brain cells of both monkeys who had been subjected to the marijuana and ones who had not. This study became the foundation of the government, and other special interest groups claim that marijuana kills brain cells. Here's what they didn't tell you. After 6 years of requests, how the study was conducted was finally revealed. Instead of administering 30 joints a day for 1 year, Dr. Heath used a method of pumping 63 Colombian-strength joints through a gas mask within 5 minutes over 3 months.
They suffocated the monkeys. What they did is they put these gas masks basically on their face and they pumped pot into it, but without additional oxygen. So after X amount of time, the brain shut down. Well, if you suffocate, the first thing that's going to happen is your brain cells are going to die with lack of oxygen. So what they did is they suffocated the monkey, showed all these dead brain cells, and then went on to associate it by saying that cannabis use causes your brain cells to die. And how many people, not knowing the origin of the study, have gone on to quote it and re-quote it. And now people believe it.
Studies since have shown no signs of any brain cell damage. In 2005, new research suggested that marijuana could possibly stimulate brain cell growth. That study hasn't received the same attention. Another common belief, marijuana causes lung cancer.
In the 1999 study by the Institute of Medicine that was paid for by the United States government, they had to use words like may and should cause cancer.
We've been hearing for years them trying to say that it causes lung cancer, and we say,
Really, that's interesting because you can't even show us one case of cancer being caused by cannabis use alone.
You definitely have to do it moderately because it does paralyze the cilia, but if it's not radioactive, you're probably not going to get cancer from it.
Smoking can be harmful because of the properties of smoke.
Not as a result of anything in the cannabis plant, but because they're intaking heated plant matter into their lungs.
People said, well, you don't know, we haven't been smoking it long enough. Look what happened with cigarettes. We've had about 4 decades, or more than 4 decades of experience. If this was going to show up, it should have shown up by now.
Finally, a study came out just in the last month verifying that cannabis smoke does not cause cancer. It's different than nicotine. And the elements in the tobacco smoke do cause cancer, and the elements in the marijuana don't.
There's no cases of marijuana-only smokers getting brown lung syndrome. There's no cases of marijuana-only smokers getting emphysema. Strange for a plant that's so dangerous. How come none of that?
Marijuana is as bad for you or worse than tobacco? Impossible. If they had the evidence, they'd be putting emaciated bodies or emphysema, lung cancer, black lungs, they would be parading them throughout the media. They don't have one. Yet people somehow or other think that it might cause the same thing.
This is what people need to realize. The only reason why it's illegal is because of economics. It's because there's like 1,000 different things that marijuana would fix that pharmaceutical drugs right now are prescribed for. And it would cost the pharmaceutical companies billions and billions of dollars every year. If marijuana was made illegal, it would cost alcohol companies. When you see those commercials, like those, the talking dog, the pot commercial.
Yeah.
I wish you wouldn't smoke weed. Those are sponsored by Partnership for a Drug-Free America. Partnership for a Drug-Free America is funded by alcohol companies. I mean, it's hilarious.
Really?
Yeah, and alcohol is a drug.
Yeah.
But it's a drug that's sanctioned.
Yeah.
And it's like, have you ever meet someone that's like, I don't do drugs. Meanwhile, they're smoking and they have a beer in their hand.
Yeah.
What are you doing right now, douche?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, just because it has a label and a barcode and you can scan it doesn't mean it's a drug. In 1935, they came out with a machine called a decorticator. And what a decorticator is, it allows you to effectively and economically effectively process hemp fiber. Because before they used to use slavery. And when slavery was abolished in 1865, they had no means of effectively producing this pulp like, it would be economically effective. So more people were using cotton. But the Declaration of Independence was printed on hemp. The parachute that George Bush Sr. used to parachute in World War II, that was made out of hemp. Hemp had huge industrial uses. It was just very difficult to process. And so they came out with this machine called a decorticator, and it allowed them to really effectively produce it. And then Popular Science had this cover that said, hemp, the new billion-dollar product, and everyone was going to start using hemp for paper, for textiles. And William Randolph Hearst, who owned all these newspapers, and on top of that, owned all these paper mills, it was going to cost him millions of dollars to convert over to hemp. So instead, he started printing stories in his paper about some new drug called marijuana. And marijuana wasn't even a slang term for cannabis. Marijuana was used to describe a type of Mexican wild tobacco, completely unrelated. So they called it marijuana, and they said, this is how they got it illegal. They said, people are smoking it, and blacks and Mexicans are raping white women. So Congress outlawed this new drug, not even knowing they were outlawing hemp. They had no idea, which hemp had been in use for thousands and thousands of years. Yeah. And so then they came out with all these videos, or these movies rather, like Reefer Madness and all these propaganda films, and it was all just to get people to think that there's something wrong with this one. It was totally economic. That's all it is.
So you're a casual user, right?
I mean, I know a little bit about it. No one has died from pot in over 10,000 years of use. 400,000 people every year die directly, in this country alone, directly from use of cigarettes. Yeah. No one's ever died from pot, ever. But it's illegal. And you're not going to live forever, all right? You're going to live and you're going to die, and everybody is. We're all temporary beings going through this life, and, who are you to tell other people what they can and can't do? And people are like, oh, pot makes you a loser, pot makes you lazy. No, you're a loser and you're lazy. And if you smoke pot, you're a pot-smoking lazy loser. It doesn't mean pot makes you a loser. People say, well, you can abuse marijuana. Well, shit, you can abuse cheeseburgers, too. You don't go around closing Burger King because you can abuse something. I can take a fucking fork and jam it in my eyeballs. That mean forks should be illegal? I could jump off a bridge. Should we outlaw bridges? Let's nerf the world. How many people who are on antidepressants really have imbalances, and how many of them just got off of a bad relationship and they're depressed? The people that have personality problems and the people that are going to be lazy and going to lose their job, they're going to lose their job anyway. They're not losing their job because of marijuana. That's just a lie.
So as a medical doctor, previously in clinical practice for about 25 years, I can say with a real understanding of the science and the health impacts that marijuana is a substance that is dangerous because it's illegal. It's not illegal on account of being dangerous, because it's not dangerous at all.
Don't criticize